Everybody, thanks for watching. So real quick before I get into this video, just want to say something about the shooting, the killing, I should say, that happened here in Las Vegas last night. Finney, the legend, who was a YouTuber, and his wife was shot and killed right on the strip, right in front of the Bellagio by Sin City Manny, who, they had a long-term beef between each other. And, it's already videos that was out there of Manny looking for him, and supposedly something to do with him trying to get his YouTube channel shut down or getting it shut down. A lot of back and forth stuff, but nobody should lose their life over a YouTube, beef. People take social media way too seriously. For the most part, people that record, most YouTubers in the city I follow, I didn't know this dude or what have you, but whatever the situation was, cost this man his life. And he was shot right in front of the Bellagio and killed in front of the Bellagio in public. At night, around 10 o'clock, I was literally up the street when it happened with my family, and traffic had to basically come to a halt, and people had to U-turn to get away from the crime scene. But I was literally like minutes away from when it happened. So, it kind of hit home a little bit. But, you guys got to be careful out here. Anybody that's out here recording, I mean, if you do this or anything, I mean, it's just not worth getting into beefs with people and you don't understand their mental state or what they've gone through or what they probably will do or what have you. I always keep a gun with me, no matter what. So it is what it is. But, be safe, protect yourself. Those two people didn't have to be shot and killed like that. I mean, the dude, he turned himself in, but I mean, he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison over what? Like, it's just dumb. But yeah, crazy situation. A few people hit me up about it. And yeah, I know all about it. I was like literally right there, probably minutes away from when it happened. But yeah, crazy situation. Just, be safe out there. And I'm going to do this video from the car. No, I actually switched cars and forgot my tripod. But yeah, let's get into this video. Also, real quick for everybody. So the court case for my book is getting ready to come up, right? So it's going to be the end of it. Everything is going to be done. It's going to be a ruling in my favor. I'm like 1,000% sure that's what's going to happen. So once that ruling happens, right? If you order a book, right? I know who you guys are. The majority of you are. But I'm going to announce this. And anybody who ordered a book who's been waiting for a book, I'm going to email you guys, and you guys can email me and let me know who's waiting for the book. I'll go and match it up and see who is legit and who's not. And you guys are going to get a book. You have to pay absolutely nothing. Book's going to ship to you guys. And I may be contacting, I'm going to contact everybody. An email is going to go out to everyone to confirm that you guys still have the same mailing address. So once this happens and the ruling is in my favor, we're going to release these books. And I also have 2 new books that are already set to go out. You guys are going to see those books go out for sale because I'll be able to release books again. And books are going to go out. And books are going to go up for sale as well. So that'll be the end of that. And I'll finally be able to release books. I'll also be able to ship flash drives. Again, the reason why I haven't really gotten to that because I can't do anything because my shipping deal is caught up in this whole thing. So I have a shipping deal with Shippo. I talked about this before. It's called Shippo, like Hippo. And that is kind of tied up into this whole thing. And once all that stuff is done and released in my favor, I'll get that deal back. So I don't take a massive hit in shipping this stuff out, and I don't lose money or what have you. So all this stuff is going to happen within the next couple of weeks or sooner. And when it happens, books will release. You guys will see books go back up for sale. And then that'll be the end of that. And we won't have to deal with this shit again because, yeah, it was crazy. Learning experience, but it is what it is. But I'm happy to be able to announce this finally, that the nightmare is going to be over and everybody's going to get books and books are going to go back out for sale. So I appreciate everybody. We've all been on this whole fucking thing. This whole process has been long. It's been crazy, but that's how it goes with court and a lot of nonsense. But I appreciate everybody's patience on that and the people who stuck up with me. I told you guys we're going to get to this point eventually, and it's coming. And I'll be able to put all this stuff out and shut up all the fucking haters who, conspiracy theorists, people who thought there's some type of shit going on. Don't you think I would have been put books out? I would have been selling books if it was, if it wasn't something wrong, of course. So I've written 3 new books since then. 2 are going to go out. The 3rd one I'm still working on. I'm finishing up, you might as well say. So you guys will see that. But yeah, let's get into this video. So now you guys understand, like I'm going to talk about everything. I cover everything on this channel, all kinds of topics. But one of the things I've been putting information out a lot on is genetics, specifically that of African people, right? So you have a large group of people out there, namely the Black Hebrew Israelites and some other people who, you know, ignorantly speaking that African American DNA and African DNA are different, right? So it's a lot of people putting that narrative out there and they're putting that information out there in the wrong capacity, the wrong context. Now, I'm here to tell you straight up, they're correct. They're right. Yes, African American DNA and African DNA are different. But guess what? African DNA and other African DNA are different as well. In fact, nobody has the same DNA as anybody else unless you're a identical twin. And there's still some subtle differences, right? So when you're talking about DNA, you got to be specific, right? Because what is DNA really? DNA is a bunch of, information. And, to make up a complete organism takes a genome, right? And DNA is basically what? 3 billion pairs of codes, basically, that's going to give you a genome, which is going to make up that organism. So what are we talking about specifically as far as genetics? Now, it's a lot you have to understand when it comes to DNA and how that whole thing works. But my whole point in all this is to get people to understand, well, one, their point is to say, we have different DNA than Africans. Therefore, we are something different in nature, right? Not understanding how that came to be. And that's my whole beef with the whole thing is you guys can say, yeah, a different DNA, but different DNA how? How does that take place? And then you have to understand, one, everybody has different DNA. If you're not an identical twin, you're going to have different DNA. And you're going to have different DNA because the genetics or, the food you eat, the climate you grew up in or evolved in is going to be different. If you're in a certain geographical location where it's a warmer climate or cooler climate, your DNA is going to vary depending on the foods that you eat, because when you change your diet or you have a different diet, the foods that you eat can basically send signals to your cells and to your body or what have you to shut off different cells, to shut off different traits, different things from evolving or developing in your body, right? So this is going to happen with different people around the world who eat different foods that are in different diets, right? So if that's the case, then of course, throughout time, you're going to have a different diet than other people. Now, here's another thing that a lot of people don't understand. You have migration patterns, right? So when you have a migration and you have people leave out of a certain geographical area, right, where it's a warmer climate or a colder climate, no matter what it is, if you leave that area and you migrate into a different area with different people who eat different food and you mix in with these people, it's going to alter the DNA. That offspring is going to be a little bit different, right? And you're going to have a different look. Now, this may be a big shock to many of you, and a lot of you African Americans are not going to like this. But almost everybody, every African American in America has European DNA. You don't like it, go look it up. I'm pretty sure that you have some part of European DNA within you. And there's been studies on this, which I'm going to get into in a little bit, that prove this. So one, you got to think about migration patterns. You got to think about before transatlantic slave trade and even go back before the sub-Saharan or the Saharan slave trade, the Arab slave trade, I should say, where Europeans and black people mingled. We know the Greeks were in Africa. We know, in Rome, there was black and white. We know in a lot of European countries, there was mixed. It was a mixture, right? So there was a lot of fucking going on. It's a lot of mixing going on. And clear as day, go look at your cousins. If you got a light-skinned cousin, that's probably why your cousin light-skinned or why you're light-skinned. A lot of people just don't want to think about that or, because when we think about back then, we think about slavery, right? We don't think about before slavery. When we think about back then, we think about, segregation, racism. Oh, no way, black and white people was messing around. Yeah, they was fucking. And they was creating babies. So you guys got to understand, like in your bloodline somewhere, and then you got to think about the rape, everything that happened with slavery, what was going on with slave master, and all that stuff that was going on. Not to mention your ancestor could have went to another country, a tropical country, any type of scenario. But if you got light-skinned cousins, there's more light-skinned people in your black family then that's probably what it is, right? So you got to understand that as well. So there's a lot of mixing, and that would cause a DNA change as well. So when people say, well, African Americans look different, we don't look like those Africans. Oh, that's why, nigga. You don't look like them because, one, climate, which climate change has an effect on DNA. Climate change can have a major effect on sending signals to the body or telling your cells to not do something. As I talked about before, when you talk about the Ice Age and, thousands of years of this, and basically nature is saying, hey, you don't need this big nostrils anymore because you're going to be breathing in too much cold air. So we need to make those nostrils smaller, right? You don't need the woolly hair anymore, right? And so nature is going to change you, and make it conducive to your environment and make you a better genetic or fit in more with your environment genetically, right? That's how nature works. God works in mysterious ways, right? They say. So it's all these things you got to look at as to the reason why our DNA is different from African people. Now, does that mean that, the Moors wasn't black? Does that mean, kings around the world wasn't black? If you were an African king, does that mean anything different, that African Americans are not the same DNA as African people? Does that change anything? It doesn't change anything. And when we're talking about the same DNA, first of all, understand this as well. We're talking about a small variation, a small change. We are still 75 to 85% African. So predominantly your genetics, your genome is African. So whatever mixed in shit that's mixed in, that's what it is. Now, I did the whole DNA and all that stuff years ago. I know we have Thai in our bloodline, a lot of Asian, a lot of Africans. We have a lot, right? So it is what it is. You don't control what your ancestors did back in the day. You probably didn't even know what they did. But there was mixing in throughout the world. And I broke this whole thing down on how the Aryans, Europeans, systematically did this and went across the world to mix in. What you got to think about is this. Why our ancestors? What was special about our ancestors in that we are African Americans and we were here? Why did they choose to mix in with us and then we see Africa left alone the way that it is, right? What was so special about our ancestors, right? And I got into this whole thing that they chose to mix in with us and breed with us, right? So that gets into Tartaria, the Moors, kingdoms, and everything I talked about in plenty of videos on how we know black people were already in the Americas, and we know already West Africa, kingdoms in Africa already existed, and it was already mingling with these Europeans and mixing in with these Europeans. And it's not a myth about the, marrying into families. That's a real thing. They did this in Africa as well. When there was two rival, let's say families, and there was a war for whatever reason, to broker the peace or keep the peace, one person would marry into the family, or whenever it was some type of major business deal, they would marry into the family because it's the best way to do it. Because now we're family. Like, you're not going to go against the family. And as I talked about in the previous video, family is everything. So in order for me to feel comfortable that you're not going to stab us in the back because you have no relationship, well, we're going to have a family union, and this daughter is going to marry this son, and then they're going to have a child, and that's going to bring both families together. Now, this happened back in the day, and we know what happened after that. Execute Order 66, right? Once the Europeans married into these black kingdoms, they stabbed them all in the back and took over and covered everything the fuck up, right? But again, in no way African Americans having different DNA from Africans changes anything. It doesn't change any of that. Now, here's the thing, we don't know for sure that all black people originated in Africa, right? We could have originated somewhere else, and whatever happened, we somehow, ended up in Africa. But the thing is this, where's any proof of that? So, of course, all of the evidence shows that we originate from Africa. Now, please be my guest and find me a landmass, that's like Africa, meaning predominantly black people. So stands the reason that that's where we probably came from, since it's the largest continent of, African population, of the black population. Now, for people who don't like that for whatever reason, and want to distance themselves from Africa for whatever reason, that's your beef. It is what it is about that. But that doesn't change what you are. It doesn't change your genome. It doesn't change your genetics or, whatever you think you are. You're still African. You're still majority African, right? No way around that. So whatever you think you are, think again, because you're African. So I don't understand what is this hatred for African people by African people, by African Americans, whatever the fuck that is, right? So you're still a nigga. You're still black. It doesn't matter what you want to call yourself. This is how they see you. Plain and simple. So the thing is, you got to understand the genetic part of it. And I've seen all these black Hebrews with the E1, B1, and all this other stupid, dumb shit they want to come out with. It doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change what we know that's proven about genetics, right? About us. And I don't care what nobody say. I mean, I look like an African. You go to Africa, you look like those black people. Now, they may look different from you as far as physical features or structures, but that's anybody. I mean, you go to St. Louis or you go down south, you're going to look different from them down south niggas. You're going to look different from those West Coast guys. You're going to look different. I mean, it is what it is. Go to Puerto Rico. It's dark skin there as well. It doesn't matter where you go. At the end of the day, it changes nothing. You're black. The majority of you is black. Whatever your ancestors mixed in with, it is what it is, right? So, one, there's so much more to all of it genetically, especially as it pertains to African people. And I talked about before, understanding what DNA is, and DNA is basically, genetic instructions, right? You have 3 billion base pairs, right? 23 pairs of chromosomes. That's going to give us the genome, right? I talked about this in the previous video. So there's so much information in DNA, but until you get that 3 billion base pairs and those 23 pairs of chromosomes and all those instructions in that DNA, which can be so much coming from, family, until you get that and you get a complete genome, which is the complete genome is going to give you the whole physical makeup of that organism, which, be us or what have you. And it's so many different things in there. Of course, no two are going to be alike unless you're identical twins, as I said. And there's also still going to be some differences or what have you. But this is what a lot of people are not looking at, and they're not looking at the complete science behind it. They're just saying, oh, we don't look like them, so we're not the same. It's like, come on. So I get this argument from people, and I try to tell people that you got to look deeper into the whole thing. And it doesn't change anything about what you believe as far as what black people did in this world and what happened to us. Being attached to African people is something you should be proud of, and being African is something you should be proud of when we're talking about the most copied, robbed people on the planet. And for people to want to give up the land of Africa to accept what's in Israel. What the hell is in Israel? I tell these people this all the time. What is there? Tel Aviv? We got a beach, Sharm Sheikh. Go there, you're going to get robbed probably. What's there? You want to trade that in for what's in fucking Africa? Are you kidding me? It don't make sense. So, a lot of people, some people I can understand where the argument comes in at, but the facts I don't get. Like when they try to state facts that's completely nonsense to the point. When you go and look at an African person, then you go look in the mirror and you see the same people. It's the same thing, right? No two people have the same DNA unless you are identical twins. So, of course, we don't have the same DNA as African people. We don't have the same DNA. Africans have the highest level of genetic diversity amongst human beings on the planet. Plain and simple. And that's a proven fact. But I've already put out the information, Dr. Keith Chang, Dr. Jim Lee, and the genetic mutation that we have proven that everybody basically come from us. And, you're no different. I don't know why these group of people, these Hebrews, well, I know why the Hebrews want to make it as if they are a different species or completely different from African people because of the doctrine or what they doctrine teach. But it's some bullshit. And it's not even, correct. It's not correct on the level of genetics. It's not correct on a level of just reality, right? So even the biblical aspect of it, if even in your Bible it's saying if all African people or black people came from Ham, I mean, you're black, right? And they say, oh, I seen Hebrews say we're more related to Europeans than Africans. What type of bullshit is that? So this is what we got to deal with. And I just want people to know, for the people who hit me up with this, it's so much you don't know. And we're going to get into the whole science of it because I know you're not going to take my word. So now it says here, the majority of African Americans derive their African ancestry from the approximately 500,000 to 650,000 Africans that were forcibly brought to British North America as slaves during the Middle Passage. These individuals were deported primarily from various geographic regions of Western Africa, ranging from Senegal to Nigeria to Angola. Thus, it has been estimated that the majority of African Americans derive ancestry from these geographic regions, although more central and eastern locations also have contributed. Recent studies of African and African American mitochondrial DNA, haplotype, and autosomal microsatellite markers also confirmed a broad range of Western Africa as the likely roots of most African Americans. The recent development of high-density single nucleotide polymorphism genotyping assays used primarily in genome-wide association studies has also provided unprecedented opportunities to address questions related to the evolution and migration patterns of humans. Most of the GWA studies to date have focused on European or European-derived populations of U.S. Caucasians, but a few have included minorities. The latter studies provide unique opportunities to address questions of ancestral origins in admixed populations such as African Americans and Latinos. Although the application of high-density genotyping to a broad range of worldwide indigenous populations has not yet been accomplished, an important first step has been achieved through the recent genotyping of the Human Genome Diversity Panel. This effort resulted in nearly 1,000 subjects from 51 populations being genotyped at more than 500,000 polymorphic sites. These data now provide a basic for finer scale analysis of the ancestral origins of admixed groups, such as African Americans and Latinos, in addition to enabling the accurate characterization of genetic and evolutionary relationships among these populations. Goes on to say, in this study, we characterized the African origins of African Americans by making use of the high-density genotype data generated from 94 HGDP indigenous Africans from differing geographic and linguistic groups, including 21 Mandinka from West African, 21 Yoruba from West Central Africa, 15 Bantu speakers from Southwestern and Eastern Africa, 20 Bayaka Pygmy and 12 Mbutu Pygmy from Central America, and 5 San from Southern Africa. Talk about the same people all the time. These subjects are used to represent the potential African ancestors of 136 African Americans recently genotyped in a GWA study of early onset coronary artery disease. In addition, we include 38 U.S. Caucasian subjects from advanced to represent the European ancestors of the African Americans. The use of high-density SNP data of ancestral reconstruction presents some unique statistical and computational challenges. To this end, we previously developed analytic techniques for estimating individual ancestry from multiple populations, as well as for the reconstruction of ancestry blocks and admixed individuals by using data from more than 450,000 SNP genotypes. Here we provide a unique application of SABRE to identify the ancestral origins of each of the more than 450,000 genotypes in African American individuals to reduce the analysis to those genotypes that are exclusively of African origin. We note that 58 of the advanced African Americans were also participants of a cardiac study and had previously been analyzed with 42 ancestry informative markers. We also use principal components analysis to define the genetic structure and, in particular, the African genetic structure. Underlining African Americans, another recent study used principal components analysis for the African population of HEDP but did not relate those results to African Americans. To our knowledge, the analysis reported here represents the first effort to characterize the African origin of African Americans by isolating the African-derived genome in each African American individual. So if you are fucking lost, let me tell you what they did. They took an African, they took some white folks, they took some African Americans, and they basically fucking sequenced their genome. They basically did a genetic study on these people, and they isolated what would be the match for Africans and African Americans, and what would be the match for Europeans and African Americans, to see what the percentage would be in those African Americans. And they didn't just leave it to, Africans or any black people. They said they went to different groups, right? Mandinkas and Pygmies or what have you, where they thought the majority of African American DNA would probably come from, as far as people say West Africa. But of course, we're more diverse than that. And you also got to remember there are also some untouched, untapped tribes and areas in Africa the white man has never been to and will not set foot in. As you guys know, I've talked about this before. So we still have a bunch of genomes and a bunch of DNA that we don't even know it's out there. We haven't even touched. So remember that. Keep that in mind as well. Results. African and European ancestry in African Americans. Principal components analysis for more than 450,000 SNPs, including all populations, Africans, African Americans, and U.S. Caucasians, revealed as expected a major separation between the African and U.S. Caucasian populations along the first principal component, PC1, whereas the second principal component led to the separation of the various African groups. The two pygmy populations, Binka, Mbuti, and the San of South Africa, are well separated from the other African groups, whereas a greater genetic affinity appears to exist between the Mandinka of West Africa, the Yoruba of Central West Africa, and the Bantu speakers, who derive from Kenya and Southwestern Africa. It is also clear in Figure 1 that the African Americans lie on that direct line between the European Americans and the West Africans, reflecting their varying levels of admixture between these two ancestral groups. Like I said, it was fucking. Final results here. It says African components of ancestry and African Americans, right? We estimate that on average, nearly 80% of the ancestry in our samples of African Americans is of African origin. Understand? 80% of the ancestry in our samples of African Americans is of African origin. A careful examination of the African component of ancestry in African Americans is facilitated by restricting the analysis to those portions of their genome that are exclusively of African origin. To do so, we used a program saver to infer European versus African-derived alleles for each individual and retain for analysis only those loci that had a high probability of harboring two African-derived alleles, while denoting the other genotype as missing. For these all subsequent analysis, we included the 128 African Americans whose estimated African ancestry exceeded 55%.